So we are recording this program today so that it can be rebroadcast. And we thank our folks at Local Access Cable for bringing you this presentation from the library and AAA on the Real ID. So thank you for having your video and audio turned off. We will be opening up the audio for some questions at the end of this presentation. So please do jot those down. We don't want anything to be lost. Diana and Robert are happy to answer those. And as always, whenever we have presentations, we do love to get your feedback. Tell us what we can tell our presenters, tell us how we're doing. So do expect to get a feedback form in the email after this presentation. Should just take you just a couple of minutes to complete that. Thinking about everything else that I'd want to share. I also want to ask you to do keep in touch with the library through Facebook and Twitter and even on our homepage, because things change. And you may have seen that today we closed unexpectedly. If you follow us on Facebook and Twitter, you would know that. So I am happy to be still presenting this program. Again, thanks to Diana and Robert from AAA. All that being said, I think I will be turning off my own video and I will be handing you off to their very capable hands. Thank you, Diana and Robert.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And thanks to everyone who's joining us. This has been a journey, Real ID. A couple years back, we thought the deadline would be in 2020. And then, we all did the big pivot because of COVID. So the deadline's actually been changed a couple of times. But we want to make sure that everyone is prepared for switching over a regular license to Real ID if you wish to do so, and you have all the documents that you need. And we also wanted to just take a minute up front to explain the genesis of Real ID. So for all of you who are joining, my name is Diana Gugliotta, and I'm the Senior Manager of Public and Government Affairs for AAA Northeast. A couple of years ago, we began, discussing and explaining Real ID with presentations like this out in communities. And one of the questions that would come up on a pretty frequent basis was, do I really need a Real ID? And the misunderstanding, I think, of the genesis of Real ID. So for a lot of people, they thought it was the past administration that created this mandate, when in fact, this was a recommendation of the 9/11 Commission back in 2001. It formally passed and was approved in 2005 as the Real ID Act. And basically, it sought to establish basic security standards for document requirements for all 50 states. So it changed things a little bit. We now have digitized photos. It lists, it requires the credentials to make sure people's birth certificates and other documents of identification are aligned with the way it appears on the Real ID, and on and on. So Robert will explain a little bit more about what you need for documentation in just a bit. I can tell you that I have been through the process myself twice. In fact, I did convert to a Real ID in 2019, then got married last year and had to go through the process again with my new last name. But that's okay. It was pretty easy as a process. I will tell you, I was able to do it the first time at one of our AAA branches. It was very convenient for me, obviously. I work there, but I did the second one at an RMV location, and it was a seamless process as well, because I knew what documents that I needed to have handy. So as long as you take this information with you, I promise you it'll be painless. I think the biggest reason that most Americans need to think about being proactive in getting their Real IDs early on and in time for this new deadline is to basically, be able to get on a flight at a whim, be able to travel domestically if they don't have a valid US passport. So The other times that I've needed to show real ID personally, which you can see on my PowerPoint slide here, would pertain to everyone, is just accessing certain federal buildings. The one in question for me was Raytheon, right? So a military contractor, those are secure sites, and they want to make sure that you have those federal credentials. So now we are looking for the star on a license. And just to show you what a standard Massachusetts driver's license or ID card, you can do this for both ID and a driver's license, looks like, versus the real ID version with the star intact. So that's a federally compliant card when you have that star on there. Basically, we just want to emphasize, you don't have to get a real ID. If you're one of those folks that doesn't travel much, or you are up to date with your US passport, you're all set. You just have to remember that you would have to carry that passport with you to enter certain federal buildings as well as board aircraft. So the answer is not really, not necessarily. It definitely depends on you. So now I'm going to turn it over to Robert Wheeler, and he is one of our more senior and most experienced branch managers throughout AAA Northeast. Robert manages the branch in South Attleboro. So he actually has knowledge of processing the Massachusetts real IDs as well as Rhode Island IDs, which is kind of unique. And every state has a little bit of a different criteria, even though the federal mandate is the same. He can explain that, but I think most of you joining are from Seekonk, and it would pertain to Massachusetts in your cases. So Robert, take it away.
All right, thank you. Like Diana just said, I'm the branch manager of South Attleboro. I'm going to explain the documents for Massachusetts for the purpose of we are explaining the Massachusetts real ID. The one thing that I think that we want to make sure that we touch upon, and I like to touch upon it early, are the documents that I'm going to explain. There's stipulations to them. So like one of the main documents we would need is a US passport or a birth certificate. But we cannot have any laminated documents or photocopies of documents. So the biggest mistake we may see when you come into the branch are photocopies, not official documents, not a birth certificate that is from, it's not a birth certificate, it's from the actual hospital you were born at. It's a certificate, but it's from the hospital. It's not registered with the city or town that you were born in. So we need official documents from the city or town that you were born in. Your Social Security card is needed. If you do not have a Social Security card, we can use your W-2 form, as long as it has your Social Security on there. If you have your Social Security card, again, it just can't be laminated. The purpose for non-lamination is we have to scan all these documents into a machine that scans it to make sure it's authentic, and that it passes all the requirements that are mandated by the real ID requirements. So it's not that we don't want to accept these documents, it's the scanning process doesn't allow us to take these documents. A couple other things for residency. We need to make sure that you reside, where you live is where you actually do live. So we just need residency documents that are within 60 days. So when you bring in a utility bill or a bank statement, or you can bring in your registration, that obviously is allowed to bring in. They just have to be within 60 days. So if you bring in a credit card statement, a bank statement, any of the list of items for address documents, we just need to make sure they're within 60 days. If they're older than that, unfortunately, we can't take them. So a lot of the requirements that we need have small stipulations to them, but you will get, if you have not received a checklist or if you've seen the checklist, it looks like, I'll try and hold it up here. Oh, it's blurry, I'm sorry. But there's a lot on this checklist and it can look overwhelming. It's just because they're giving you so many options. So for proof of lawful presence, the most common is your birth certificate or your passport. There's a lot of other options you have. You just need to pick one from that list. When you go down to your proof of residency, there's countless. There's so many proof of residencies you can bring in, but you just need to select 2 from that document. And Social Security, just 1 item from their document, and most of that would be Social Security card or W-2, most common. The other thing that we see a lot of members, unfortunately, only because it's at the bottom of the document, is if they had a name change, we need to show that chain of events for the name change. So if you've been married, we need your marriage certificate. And again, it has to be from the city. It has to be an official document. It cannot be from the church as a statement that you were married. It has to be official. So we need to do that. And unfortunately, if you have changed your name more than once, we need to see each one of those changes. So as long as you have those documents to show the name changes, we can do it all at that time. One really convenient factor with all of this is if you do not have your documents when you show up for your appointment, it's okay. We can still process most of it for you to save time. We can take your picture, we can do the eye test, we can scan all the documents in, and we can save it. And once we save it, when you return with that one document you may be missing, you just come in really quick at the end of the day, we pop you in, and you get your real ID. So even if you're missing something, it's okay. We can still do 90% of it and continue on with it. We're very understanding of the situation. We see it all the time.
Yeah, we believe in kindness and compassion at AAA.
Yes.
There is a lot to get together. And like Robert said, that full list of documents, options for documents is on the Massachusetts website, the RMV website. So you can see that on your screens, mass.gov/guides, RMV Real ID Info Center. And there's a significant list. So you can go through it. And I would say, Robert, I've heard from many branch managers that the one thing that a lot of members tend to do incorrectly is they believe that one document can serve 2 purposes. Yes. So one document can't really do double duty. You've got to have one for each category, right?
Exactly. Like a good example for that is your W-2 that has your social, but it has your address. We can't use it for 2. It has to be separate documents, unfortunately. But there's plenty of choices for you to be able to get that. Oh, one more thing before I hit that. Children, we encounter that quite a bit now, especially with children getting their permits who want the real ID. You may think that you don't have enough documents to prove their address. That's the #1 thing that we encounter. You can fill out an affidavit as a parent stating that the child lives with you. So it's okay if you only have one document, like a school transcript. If they have a savings account, it's okay. Once you come into the branch, we have a form you fill out, you sign in front of us, and that's just a statement you saying they live with you. So if you have any children in your house that are having trouble with documents for address, it's okay. You really only need one, and then we have a form for you to fill out that serves as the second form for you.
Yeah, and sometimes where it gets a little tricky, and I've spoken to members that have had to go, an extra step is, let's say, your parents gave you the name Anna Maria at birth, but Ann or Anna appears on your pay stubs and your W-2s and your sometimes even your driver's license, because in the past they didn't necessarily have to match up perfectly. They do now need to match up perfectly from the birth certificate to this real ID credential.
Yes, your name will now appear as it legally is stated on your birth certificate. I never went by junior before in my life. I am now a junior. That's just if you do not like that, you have to go through the process of changing, those documents so it can be changed on your license. All your names will line up perfectly through all documents in the government's system now. Yes.
Exactly. So this is a common mistake. This is an example. It's a state of Rhode Island on it, but no hospital birth record certificates. And that's a common misconception that you mentioned earlier, Robert. So they called these, I think, the Gerber baby certificates.
Yes, we know them. Everyone knows them as the Gerber baby. Yes, it looks official.
It does.
But it's unfortunately it's not.
Right. And I love that we have Vital Check, because we get a lot of questions about, okay, you know, I was born in Oregon, or I was born, you know, 3,000 miles away in another state. I don't have this vital record that's required here. Or even, you know, some of the older adults that I've spoken with said, you know, I just don't have the energy to stand in this line for hours at a particular, you know, government or municipal location to get my old marriage certificate. You can actually order these through a website called Vital Check. It's VITALCHEK, just the K at the end.com. In order those records. It really makes it a little bit more user-friendly, especially for folks born somewhere not within driving distance. So that's always an option too. If you have questions also, there is a phone number that you can see on your screens here for the Mass RMV, Massachusetts Registry of Vital Records. You can email them, you can call ahead at 617-740-2600 to order records there as well, which that's handy in Massachusetts. That's not the case in every state, but it's definitely a helpful service. And here's another one, those church marriage certificates that Robert mentioned earlier. You know, unfortunately, and oftentimes, this happens pretty regularly with older adults too, as they were never given an official birth certificate, but they did have a baptismal certificate from church, and they had always been able to use that previously as a credential, and not the case this time. So anything that's issued by the church is not, we're not able to accept, unfortunately. And Robert, I'll let you get into to this portion of it, the 1099 and the pay stub.
Yeah, so with this, the non-laminated Social Security card, we went over that. Just like I said, for scanning purposes, we need to make sure that it's a legal document. And also, one thing that people come in with is the top of the Social Security card. When you first got a Social Security card, there was a top and there was a bottom. The top says to retain this, basically just so you know it. But some people have been using that as a social for their whole life, but it's not the actual card. We need the bottom portion that looks like what's in that picture, or closely to it, not that top part. We do see quite a few members coming with that top part that says retain for your records. 1099 issued within the last 5 years. That's another tax document that serves purpose because it has your Social Security on it. The pay stub, the thing with the pay stub is people just see pay stub and they bring it in. You have to make sure it has your Social Security on it. You can usually go onto your works intranet and select to have your Social Security show or not show on your pay stub. So before you print it, make sure it shows it. And if not, maybe contact your human resource department and ask how you could select it to show your full social, because usually there is an option for you to opt in or opt out of it only showing the last 4. We do see some people come with a pay stub and it shows just the last 4, and they're disappointed because we can't take it because it doesn't show the whole thing. So all 3 of those documents are perfectly fine to take, to have in. If for some reason you cannot get a hold of these, like in the slide before, you can obtain a Social Security card locally. There's one in Attleboro actually, or you can process it, online also. But these 3 documents are the most common ones. We usually don't have too many problems. It's mainly the lamination that we see a lot of, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it was really common for a lot of people to go and laminate their Social Security cards. So,
yeah.
So yeah, just have the peace of mind that you have alternatives.
Yeah.
Here's another that I think frequently makes its way into your branch, Robert.
Yes. And that card to the left is what I was just mentioning. It's your Social Security card, and then where it's kind of sideways and blacked out, that's the top portion that some people bring in because it does have a Social Security number on it, but that's just a stub. And when we can't scan that as a legal document. And same thing with your Medicare, health insurance. There's really no information on there for us to scan, but unfortunately, some people feel like it's a document that could be used, but it doesn't, contain the actual Social Security number that the government requires.
Right. And the Medicare card, that tricks a lot of people also.
Mhm. It definitely does. Even though it doesn't have your social anywhere on it, it's just a mindset, and because it's something they always use. So
Exactly. I think people tend to think of that as a government issued card. So yeah, it's a bit confusing.
Yeah.
And going back to common proof of residency documents, like Robert mentioned, one of the conveniences of this is, oftentimes you can opt for paperless billing, and you could print a bill or a statement, or if it's mailed to you, just bring that statement in. Robert, quick question here. So I know you have to scan these into the system. If someone came into the branch and they did have paperless billing and they had the document on their cell phone, are you able to use that anyway? Okay.
Yes, we do that quite a bit. Technology has saved a lot of people time while they're waiting for their appointment. If they have a utility bill that they have online, they can just forward it to our branch email. We can print it for them. We can, as long as there's no personal information being sent over to us, we can print it. But unfortunately, because of safety and security for your identity, if it has like no Social Security documents can be sent. If you have a bank statement on there and your account number shows, we really prefer you to be able to download it into a PDF and black it out. It's just for safety reasons. But a lot of these utility bills, bank statement is okay, because we don't need your bank account, number on there to scan. We just need the address, in your name. Rent insurance policy is perfectly fine, and we see that all day. We print a lot of those. So yes, if you forget something, we usually try and find a way for you to be able to walk out with your real ID. We'll find a way for you to do it if it's possible. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think it's a little bit confusing for some, because in the last slide, you can see that a homeowner's or renter's insurance policy is acceptable, but not auto insurance. And obviously the reason for that is we want to see where you live. You can, possibly, not that we want you to insure your vehicle under a different head, but really the goal is to show proof of residency. So that gets a bit confusing for some people as well, right, Robert?
Yeah, we see that. And people store their cars in different places sometimes, and it's legal to do that, but that's not where you reside. So we can't go by where the car is officially stored, even though it may be at your house. Some people don't store their house and insure their car at their actual residence. So that's why we can't accept it.
Right. And here's our message, kind of our final message. Please be patient and don't deviate from the checklist. So, like I mentioned earlier, that list on the RMV or Real ID website is very thorough. We don't want you kind of making up other credentials though. So just make sure you review that list very, very carefully. Don't deviate.
Yeah, the staff is, they're trained by the state. We follow their guidelines. We follow every rule they set. Everything we're explaining to the members when you come into the branch is verbatim what the state requires for us to do. So it's not that we do not want to accept a certain document from you, or we're trying to, make anything difficult. We just have to follow the guidelines that were set in place. And we'll do what we can to try and get you out that door with that real ID. With the technology, getting documents to us, trying to explain what you save in the documents, having you come back at the end of the day, or maybe we can fit you in that same day if we have time. But please be patient.
Yeah, so I don't know that we mentioned the new deadline previously, and I apologize for that, but the new deadline is May 3rd, 2023. And remember, on May 4th, 2023, unless you have a valid US passport or a real ID, you're not able to board an aircraft. So this is really important that you understand this. the other piece of this is a fee schedule. So Robert, if you could just kind of walk us through, a lot of people have that misconception that you have to pay all this extra money to obtain a real ID. And I was saying earlier that I think one of the absolute advantages to pushing the deadline back is hopefully for all of us, we can line this up with our regular license renewal process, right?
Yes, there is zero fee to have the Real ID put on your license as long as it's done at your normal renewal period. It's extra documents that we require to have the Real ID put on. So there would just be a regular license fee of the $50. If you would choose to update early and get a duplicate license and have the Real ID on, we have to process it as a duplicate license. So that's where that $25 fee, some people are thinking of as a Real ID fee, but it's not. So what we ask is there's no need to update to the Real ID right now. The regulations got pushed off to 2023. So you can fly using your license just as you always have. And just when it's time to renew your license, you can just renew it at that point. If you choose to come in early and you want to get it for peace of mind or just to have it early, that's fine. But it's not a fee for the Real ID. It's just a fee for the duplicate license that we're producing, or the Mass ID fee that's in there. The only other fee, I guess you could say there would be, is you need to be a AAA member to use the services. So as long as you're a AAA member, you can use these registry services in our branches. So sometimes people come in, they're not aware of that because we're getting to be a very popular place for Real IDs. But yeah, you need to be a AAA member. And as long as you're a member, that's fine. And if you're not, you can join same day. Not a big deal. If you forgot to, we can get you in there. But there is no fee for Real ID in short.
And Robert, would you mind outlining who, beside a non-AAA member, we can't unfortunately convert a Real ID for in certain circumstances? I know
CDL.
I'm a Rhode Island resident, I'll
Yes.
disclose that, but because my name changed, I couldn't unfortunately go through that process at a AAA branch.
Well, it's anything brand new. If you need a new license, we can't produce new licenses. So we can do your renewals, your duplicates. If you have a CDL, unfortunately, we're not allowed to touch CDL licenses. You would have to go to full service at that point. And it states on the website when you make the appointment, those stipulations, but they get missed sometimes. But
Yeah.
So there's a few situations where we can't do it. But basically, brand new is the biggest thing, and CDLs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask this because this will be helpful for my own knowledge too. Does the Commonwealth allow us to create a Real ID for someone who was not born in the United States?
There's documents that they require for proof of. I'm going to show you right here. I want to get my comments right.
Or maybe I should have said if they're a non-US citizen.
Well, a permanent resident card. If
Okay.
they have the documents, so if they have a permanent resident card, a consular report of birth abroad. So if they're if they're not a resident, but it's a sticky one. As long as they have a permanent resident card, they can come in here and they can do it. If they have a birth abroad, they can do it. Certificate of naturalization form, we can take that. There's certificate of citizenship issued by the Department of Homeland Security. So this checklist, so if you question whether you can or cannot, or whether you have the documents needed, on this list of proof of lawful presence, there's a lot of options on there. So there's a very good chance that you could, as long as you have one of these documents.
Okay. And I think we would refer those individuals to the Department of Homeland Security website, dhs.gov, just to be sure. We have to operate in the confines of what the state will allow us to do in terms of processing. So I would just double check there.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So we try to be really organized. And I think one of the top secrets to the efficiency at our AAA branch offices is that we schedule appointments. So that's important. We definitely encourage folks to visit AAA.com/appointments to get a time slot scheduled. And you can just check off Real ID to let us know you're coming, basically, right?
Yes, you can select what you're coming in for. So if it's for Real ID, if it's for a registration renewal, if it happens to be whatever service you're doing, you can select what it was, and it helps us figure out our timing a little bit better with when you're coming in. If you were to make that a point, if you were to just walk in, we try to accommodate you if we can, the best we can. We may try and be able to make an appointment later that day for you, or a lot of times we're able to squeeze somebody in. So we ask you to please make an appointment, but if you're in a real bind and it's coming down to your license is expiring and you just forgot, or it's expired and you need it, we're going to try to accommodate that. So, you know what I mean, try to make the appointment, but give us a call at the branch, see if we can get you in. Let us know your license is up, against it with time limits, and we'll do our best to help you so you don't drive on that expired license anymore.
Very true. Like I said earlier, we definitely believe in kindness and compassion. we definitely do whatever we can for our members to make it happen. So I will, full disclosure, I'll tell you, my husband just got his Real ID the other day and was at AAA. He had all his documents in and out within 10 minutes. He was so excited, he was tweeting about it. It was so fast and easy and efficient. So yeah, I think we can brag a little bit about efficiency. So.
Very much so. There's a reason the appointments they're 10 minutes apart, because if everything goes smoothly, it should take about 10 minutes.
Right. So get in there before May 2023, guys. Let's get those appointments scheduled. Just, go in, do that double check of your driver's license, check in to see when it expires. And we will absolutely do our best to make it fast and easy and accommodate you. I think we're going to open it up for any questions now that you all have.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Diana and Robert, for all that you were able to share for us. I'm going to ask that if anybody has questions, just to go ahead and make sure you have unmuted yourself and have at it while you've got these experts on the line. I do ask, as Diana mentioned to me earlier, just for your own security's sake, if you have actual documents that you are questioning whether or not they're valid, that you not turn on your video and show those. Again, this is being recorded and we want to make sure that information is protected. So other than that, please turn on your audio and let's see what questions we have.
Hello, my name is Michelle. I have a question about children. How is this going to affect the children that are younger than driver's license age?
Answer that. They don't need them. Minors don't need them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, that is helpful, right? Of course, international travel, they would have a passport, but yeah, for domestic travel, they wouldn't need them. That was the easiest question I think I've ever gotten. That's awesome.
You probably given a lot of people relief, with parents with so many people to care for.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, I actually just have one person that I just admitted. So just to catch you up, we are at the question and answer period of the night. So Diana and Robert from AAA have given us some amazing details about how to get this process, to get a Real ID as efficient as possible. But though your video is off, you may go ahead and unmute yourself and join in right now with any questions.
I have a question. I'm probably not the oldest person in the world, but I'm getting there. And a lot of the documents that you require, I'm sure I've never seen in my life, just you lose these things, but there seem to be enough alternatives so that one way or another, you can pick your way back to whatever's needed.
Yes.
Yes, there's more. there's a list of documents. There's some things on here I've never seen. You have plenty of options on there. In reality, and when you think about it, there's only a few documents that you need: a lawful presence document, social security document, 2 proofs of address. So that's 4 documents. If you had a name change, you would need to produce another document showing that name change. So there could be 5 or more if you were to change your name more than once. But on average, 4 to 5 documents. Now the paper is 2-sided. There's a lot of things on there. So yes, what you said is true. It seems like there's a lot, but you only need 4 to 5 documents, and we'll be sure to help you get those documents if you have questions. Come in early too if you want to. Call the branch or stop in. We have a lot of people come in before they even make an appointment to go over the document, the checklist with us, to see if they actually have that stuff at home. And then we make the appointment for them while they're in the branch, so you don't have to worry about going home and making that appointment. So we can go over that stuff ahead of time for you too.
It looks like I haven't been paying attention, but I think I have. Say the probably 2 easiest forms that would cover proof of residence.
I used my checkbook,
Oh.
actual checkbook, because it had, my name and address on it, and a utility bill. I think I used electric bill in my checkbook.
Okay, that sounds easy.
Valid license as well, right, Robert? So
That's the easiest one. If your license hasn't expired, that works. So typically you have that on you already. So yeah.
Thank you. That's unbefuddled me.
Yeah, I think it's almost so too obvious that people don't often realize that they can use their valid driver's license as their proof of residency.
Yep. Your current registration,
Right.
because as long as it's legal, it's up to date and it's current, that works too. And it's usually right in your car. So sometimes it's running back and forth to the car and stuff, but we get it done for you.
Yeah. And Susan, what you described too, the majority of the presentations that we offered before the pandemic were in senior centers, to be honest. So I heard from a lot of people that, oh my gosh, I haven't gone looking for these documents in 40 years or 50 years. Very common. And that's often where the Vital Check, that website that we shared earlier, vitalchek.com, came in very, very handy, especially for people, like I said, that either, weren't born in this area or weren't sure where to go to find a marriage certificate, things like that.
It's also a good excuse to go looking for your safety deposit box, since that's probably where a lot of
Right.
stuff is.
True. Yes.
So you get 2 things for the price of 1.
Yes, exactly.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, I have a question. My daughter renewed her license online when all the registries were closed. At one time, they said you could get a real ID and there would be no charge. Has that changed?
There was a deadline for that. Forgive me, I cannot remember the date of that deadline, but I will circle around to that. I will find out. I can't remember the date on that.
But you're not
You are
sure what-
correct. There was a time where that was going on, yes.
Do you think it expired or you're not sure?
It did. There was a time frame for it to get done, but what I'm going to do, is there a way to be able to reach out to certain people on this afterwards, so we can get that information?
Maybe if you could leave your email address or phone number with Michelle, and we can follow up with you.
Sure,
Okay.
I have the email address of everybody who's registered. So for any questions we have to kind of pin for more research, then I'll be sure to send that out to everyone.
That works.
All right, so my other question, my license doesn't expire until July, but the deadline for the new ID is May. What would be the best route for me to take? To renew it early or to wait till July?
I'll let you take that, Robert, but
Yeah, you can do it early. That's perfectly fine. convenience that you can renew it up to a year early. So just, whatever works for you, for your schedule, just go online, make the appointment, and then we can update you to the Real ID early. That's fine. You don't have to wait right until your birthday month.
And did you say that would be $50? It would just be to renew my license as an ID, a Real ID?
Yeah, no additional cost. It's just extra documents that we need to put the Real ID on your license.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's another great thing about the Commonwealth, that they let you renew a full year in advance of when it's going to expire. That's not the case in all of our states. We AAA Northeast, we cover 5 states. So it's a great convenience in Massachusetts.
That is great. That's another reason not to procrastinate.
Right, get it over with. And if you don't mind, Michelle, I will share my email address. I'm happy to share mine with the group. And you can direct any other questions that you might think of later on to me if I need to get in contact with Robert, because he really is the guru. He does this all day, every day. I will field them through Robert, but I can be reached. It's a long name, so I apologize, but it's D like Diana, Gugliotta, GUGLIOTTA @AAAnortheast.com. And you are more than welcome to email me, even on other issues. If you have any other AAA related questions, I'm happy to help and get you to the right person if I don't have the answer to your question, but more than happy.
Sorry, I have another question.
Don't be sorry.
No apologies.
My birth certificate has my full middle name, but all of my documents, some do not even have my middle initial and some just have my middle initial. What do I need for this Real ID? What information, like, do I have to change my license so it has my full middle name?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a very short answer. I'm sorry. Yeah, the name will now appear as your legal lawful presence document. So, however your birth certificate, your lawful presence document appears is how your name will appear on your license now.
Okay, but as far as like house insurance and all the other documents, it can come through with my first and last name and my address. That's the only one that has to, everything. That's the only one that has to have my full legal name, and that's what my new license will say, correct?
Yes, that's a very good question, actually. I didn't even think of that. Your other documents don't have to have your full legal name on them. They don't all have to match with exactly your lawful presence name as it appears. Just your lawful presence name will now become the name that's listed on your license. But all your other documents, first name, last name, middle initial, no middle initial, it's okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
And that was really common. A lot of people went through that transition. In fact, the DMV in Rhode Island had automatically shortened everyone's name at one point in time. So everyone just had their middle initial if they did have a middle name. So for years, I was Diana E. And when I got Real ID, I became Diana Elizabeth on my driver's license. So very, very common.
Yes. And different states have different rules. So I know we live pretty close to the border. We may have friends and relatives in Rhode Island. There's different regulations that Rhode Island has, even though it's the same federal Real ID, there's different rules. So if you have friends or relatives who may talk to you about documents they use, it's not that we're making up our own rules, it's just we're following the Massachusetts rules and Rhode Island has their rules. So sometimes we get that problem, especially in my branch, because we're the only branch that actually processes Mass and Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different rules for what you can choose, what you can use for documents. So just stick with the Massachusetts list.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This puts you in line, or I mean, it puts our Real IDs in line with the passport. Is that correct? In terms of the way the name is listed?
Oh, okay. So I think you're saying, so the name on your real ID would match what's on your passport. Yes.
Yeah. Are there other documents that, are those the two that where it really matters?
I'm going to go back in the presentation to show you. If you didn't want to convert to real ID, let's say, there are some other valid identifications that can be used. Most of them are either issued there. Yeah, they would honestly be issued by the federal government, like military identification. That's very popular. That's very commonly used. Like the US Department of Defense ID card. But these are the kind of exceptions that you could show as your federal identification to board a plane.
Sounds easier just to do the real ID.
I think so. I think so. Because I don't think it, we commonly would, have our US passport in our purse. Doesn't fit into a wallet all that nicely. So it definitely makes life easier to do it as a real ID.
And just one thing I did not mention, and we get this question sometimes. Once you go through this process and you have that real ID star on your license, it becomes the normal process that we're all used to. It's just renewing your license at that point. You're not going to have to present all these documents again when you have to renew your license. It's a one-time deal. You got the star on your license, and then next time when you have to renew your license, it's back to the process that we're more used to, accustomed to. So it's just this one time that we have to do that.
So only one time you need to go to the safety deposit box, everyone. One trip. Yeah.
All right, I'm no stranger to a little bit of silence. I'm going to give it the last call here for questions. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much to Diana and Robert for all this very detailed information. I bow down to anyone who can keep all of that straight. And I thank you to everyone who offered your questions, because they help to spur other questions and other thoughts that, of course, we can bring to you for some follow-up. So as I mentioned before, everyone who registered tonight, I will be emailing with a feedback form, and we'll see if we can get a resolution to that question Robert was going to research for us, and also maybe throw in Diana's email address, as she was so generous to offer that to everyone tonight. So thank you so much, Diana and Robert, and thank you to Local Access Cable, who hopefully will be able to air this and get more of this information out to everyone. We're hoping. Everyone, have a great night. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.